every part of comics and artwork is a form of communication with other people. It's not just a, here, let me direct my thoughts at you as a dictation of concept, but it's hoping to convince you of how cool you think a visual could be or a story could be. And you're trying to communicate ideas, and in one part storytelling and greater part just graphic impact. You're hoping to relate a sense of energy, urgency, and enthusiasm to people. That there's a lightning of spirit that comes out of superheroes that has always worked for me. That it isn't really about the practicality of what they might do, it's not the practicality about grown men punching each other in costumes. It really isn't about that. It's a visual metaphor. And that metaphor could be for a lot of things, but it's mostly just about the energy and enthusiasm that can be found in the fun of life.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. It's time again for Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. Really excited about today's conversation. Let me first welcome for the very first time Imogen Mangle, the artist of today's project. Good to see you, Imogen.
Hi, John. Thanks for having me on.
It's my pleasure. Happy Pride Month. And stand by. We are also have our ringleader coming in right now, the woman behind this whole thing, as far as the secrets of comic book editing, Filth and Grammar's own Shelly Bond, everybody.
Hey, sorry. I'm just getting my gloves on because they're filthy. They're covered with red ink. Thanks to the people I'm working with, John, and thank you so much for having us today.
Oh yeah. No, I'm excited about this, Shell. I think it's a necessary skill, and I think it's something that every creator owner, people that are doing their own comics, ought to be aware of, and what to do and what not to do. You would say certainly, regardless, Shell, you definitely need another set of eyes at least to go over your stuff if you're self-publishing.
Oh, without a doubt. But you know what, John? I also want to stress that Filth and Grammar is also for people who don't intend to make comics, but they want to become more discerning readers. Because I think when you pretend you're a mechanic and lift up the hood and get your hands dirty and see how a comic is made, I think suddenly everything changes for you as a reader. You know, you become smarter, more enlightened, and it might even inspire you to want to edit comics or marry a comic book artist. I see you put Philip Bond's astounding cover on the screen.
Absolutely.
How about that? That's cool. My number one tip is, want to do well in comics? Marry your favorite comic book artist. And in the back, the Peanut Gallery just yelled, "He's a work in progress."
Oh, the cover is a work in progress.
Now he's qualifying that statement. He said the cover is a work in progress, but I think
really?
He meant to say that he is a work in progress.
Is he gonna put colors on it? Is that the plan?
That's the plan. He started to color it, but I love it in black, white, and red. Because that's my world. You know, I see everything in black, white, and red with a little bit of non-repro blue as an accent.
You're killing me. Happy Father's Day, Philip.
Philip, you got a happy Father's Day from John.
Oh, thank you.
That's my pleasure, buddy.
He said absolutely. Thank you. He's being taken out to lunch right now, so the house will be mine at last.
Nice.
Alone at last, to talk about him and to talk about comics and talk about Imogen, who is, in my humble opinion, the next art apocalypse in comics.
Is this, and forgive me, because again, I don't know whose images are which, but is this your work, Imogen?
Oh, yes.
That's one of mine.
Guilty as
Shelly's going to kill me live on stream, but my blood to my head.
Well, it looks great. And yeah, there you go.
Thank you so much.
Our heroine, armed with her boombox, ready for her say anything
She's
moment.
Cool. As you can
Listen.
see, Shelly is already like a perfectly designed character, so it's so easy to
Oh
draw
yeah,
in.
absolutely.
Now, listen, I am without a doubt the reluctant protagonist here. Make no mistake. I've always been behind the scenes, behind the camera, never enjoyed being in the spotlight unless I was wearing a pair of tap shoes or twirling
Right.
a baton. But that's for another podcast.
Imogen was impressing me while she was waiting to come on. Yes, you're twirling your pen, Imogen. Very, very,
Whoa, this is
very
how I
adept.
break
This is just something else
rhythm
that
of the room.
this is just something else we have in common. It's really strange, but though Imogen and I are only a few years apart in age,
It's
times
true.
50,000, we have so much in common. We really do. And it's been my greatest pleasure this year of meeting her, bringing her onto the book, kicking and screaming, and doing it with her and Laura Hull and Sophie Dodgen. And I call them like the most fantastic art trio. And I call us Team Filth. I call us Team Filth because it's about the filth and the
She
grammar.
froze.
And it's going to be whose side are you on?
Gotta be
Forgive me, my screen froze, so I'm sure I recorded whatever you just said, but unfortunately I didn't hear it. Your Team Filth are
Well, I said nice things about you, but I was
Yeah,
kind of
sure you did.
explaining how, basically we have declared this 2021 the summer of filth and grammar, officially starting tomorrow. It's summer.
That's
And
right.
we basically are setting up something that's not unlike what you probably recall, John, that whole Oasis versus Blur competition.
Of course.
Are you Team Filth or Team Grammar? We're all working for the same end goal, but we're going to have a lot of fun in Team Filth.
Excellent. That's it. Now you sent me a bunch of images. Again, that's fantastic one of you that Imogen made. Are all of these Imogen images that you sent? I like saying Imogen images, by the way. That's very alliterative. Are they Shelly? Everything like is this here? Like, is this more Imogen?
This is actually Laura.
That's
Now,
Laura.
what's going to be a lot of fun on Filth and Grammar, John, it's part how to. So it's going to be basically, pulling apart the process, 10 chapters from idea to execution, all the stages in between. So a chapter on plot, there's script, there's a script autopsy, and that one gets really bloody. There's roughs and layouts and thumbnails and turnarounds, pencils, inks, colors. There's lettering. And there's also going to be a section on webcomics. And we've got someone who really knows her shit about webcomics, and that's Imogen. That's the girl who's blushing right there. Not under the red light. But Imogen and Laura are both going to be teaching me a thing or two in this book. So it's not just me, the bossiest person in comics, self-appointed title, but both Imogen and Laura are going to be teaching their specialties, and Sophie. So they're going to kind of be, I guess, sometimes foils, because we have a character called Metagen who's going to put her 2 cents in probably every other page if she has her way.
Absolutely.
And, in addition to like single illustration and prose, there are going to be 1-page comic strips that give a little bit of backstory, a little bit of secret history about some of my favorite freelancers. And those favorite freelancers have also agreed to fess up and share their #1 pro tip with me and with the audience. So we've got people like some of your favorites, John. Like
start naming people. Go on.
We got Mike Allred. We've got Mike Carey and Peter Gross. The
Wow.
Lucifer team, the
Yeah.
team of The Unwritten. We've got superstars like Simon Bisley. Whoa, right? Oh my
Whoa,
God.
indeed. Yeah.
He looks like a bodybuilder who could just like punch your face in with his sneeze, but he is the biggest pussycat I've ever met and the most professional, coolest, badass guy to work with. We spent 6 years doing covers for Hellblazer, and they were the best 6 years ever. I love working with him. We've got Peter Milligan, who, by the way, he gets one extra special job in this comic, and it is not to just throw bon mots at everybody. I'm going to be writing a story about him based on a rumor. When I first started at Vertigo, I heard that the company sent him on a tour across America because he was writing Shade, and it was a monthly series, and he had never been to the States. So DC Comics sent him across America by train, plane, bus, maybe he hitchhiked. It was always a rumor. I want to write about what went through my head, imagining this, like, how can I describe Milligan? Fearless, gregarious, posh sounding, bon vivant rock star.
He's
On
kind of
his-
that, yeah,
on
he's
his-
kind of like Sting's definition from An Englishman in New York and everything,
There you
essentially.
go.
Yes.
Exactly. The brunette Sting. Let's
If
call
you
it
will.
that. That will get him really irritated. He's going to be editing me. He's going to be editing the script I write about him and getting me back, because I think I counted, and I think I've edited over 3,011 scripts, and 70% of them were Milligan scripts.
Wow.
So he's getting revenge. It's going to be pretty. He won't need to wear gloves. It's going to be maybe a typo here and there. Maybe a serial comma is needed. You know, that kind of thing. Maybe I'll misspell the word color and he'll add a U.
Color.
It's going to be
Yes.
very light editing.
No, I can appreciate that. Imogen, tell me about your webcomic.
Ooh, okay. So currently, I've been working on my webcomic for about 4 months, but
Okay.
I've been reading webcomics for about 10 years and trying to make them for about 5. My current one is called Singing Glass, and I'm gonna destroy myself making it because I've anticipated it's gonna be about 600 pages long, which is gonna take me
Wow.
about 10 years to make, but it's all
Wow.
like totally scripted and everything. Quite the task, yeah.
Yeah,
Good
no
luck, my goodness.
pressure.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Magnum
if anybody
opus.
wants to read it,
Well, yes, tell us the
Fine.
URL, and I'll throw a
Lots.
banner up if you give us
Yeah,
the
give-
URL.
oh
Yeah.
great, thank you.
Give us the high
I
concept.
have to
Tell
pick
us a little
one
bit
of the
about
like 5
characters.
websites. Oh my
Give
gosh.
us the high concept.
Okay. I never thought I was gonna get to actually talk about my comic.
course.
So probably the easiest place to read it is on its Instagram, which is seeingglass, as one word, seeingglass.comic. Don't know if I'm saying this very clearly. Singing like choir, glass like window.
Okay.
So obviously it's my, as I just mentioned, my 600-page epic, so it's quite hard to distill the plot, but effectively it is a story about running away from your problems as best you can. There's about 6 or 7 main cast members, but the like main character Cho is just a completely like she effectively like grew up like under a rock, and she's like made it to adulthood not really knowing anything about the world or like how to talk to people, and is suddenly just thrust out into it and completely like bombarded with all of the like drama and sensory issues and having to like navigate friendships and relationships. And also there are real gods that just roam the planet, and they used to be people and then they became sort of like bugs. That sounds interesting.
I love it.
Yeah. Now, have I got the spelling right? Because at first I only had one G. So singingglass.comic for your webcomic. Very good.
That's the
Okay,
one.
excellent. We'll throw that up occasionally as we're promoting both your webcomic and Shell's book. Definitely.
Question for Jen.
Hi.
What is the main character's name? And what is the
main
most
character's name?
coveted record in her vinyl collection?
Vinyls don't exist.
That's all right.
In-
It's
in-
generational.
in
What do you
this-
Actually, it is interesting how young people have gravitated towards vinyl again. All right, Shell needs a moment to rest, obviously, from the
I
show.
completely why Shelly asked me that, because I do collect vinyl, and this is one of the reasons why we know that we were separated at birth by like give or take a few years. But the main character's name is Cho, that's Cheo, and her favorite kind of music is probably just birdsong, but she's about to be introduced to the world of performance. It's all very acoustic because it's a super, super ancient setting. So a little bit of like lyre type lute stuff is probably going to be what's most available.
Are you collecting a playlist of music to listen to while people are reading your comic?
Yes.
Good. Great.
Don't mind. To be completely honest, and this is going to sound so like cheeky of me, but the ideal playlist to listen to whilst reading my comic is my partner Charlie Kaywood's music, both of his albums, which is relevant to Filth and Grammar because both of his album covers were drawn by Mark Buckingham.
Wow, that's
Right.
great. Good. Congratulations to Charlie. That's wonderful. My
What
gosh. Sophie
connection.
chiming in.
What a connection, right? I think,
Right?
I'm not a super religious or spiritual person, but some things are just meant to be.
Mm-hmm. The world became so small when we realized the connections.
That's great.
Bizarre.
That's fantastic.
Say, the coolest thing about making a playlist, I mean, I think the reason that Imogen really captured me in my element with my trusty sidekick here is that the comics that I edit always have a soundtrack. And it might not be exactly the soundtrack in your head, John, but it's probably close if you like my comics. And we just released the very first Spotify playlist the other day. And it's called Filth and Grammar, Music to Obliterate Typos and Tangents. And we had a lot of help from people on Twitter. And it's about an hour and 11 minutes of music. And we're going to do it again, because I think Filth and Grammar is really going to be the ultimate place to just like throw in the most cracking tunes that tell the story of your life. Because even though comics are, they don't come with audio, you got to think about it in your head. When you love certain songs, they're always on heavy rotation in your head.
Totally. No, and when I talked to Dave Gibbons about the originals, a fantastic Vertigo book, and him kind of depicting a version of the mod movement of the early 60s. And I'm like, Dave, where's your playlist? And he's like, oh, you're right, I should do that. And I keep pestering for it for 15 years. I'm like, we really want to see it. I want to get Ramsey's question in for Imogen. And then really, Sophie, you're watching as well, so I'd like you to chime in. Was there any connecting aesthetic that Imogen, Laura, and yourself, Sophie, figured out for the look of Filth and Grammar, or did you all do your own thing? Good question, Ramsey.
Jen is laughing, and I'm going to let her answer first because I'm curious what she thinks. But I always have a strategy. Jen, why don't you just share with your thoughts with us first?
Okay, so in terms of Laura and I having a matching aesthetic, that is completely unplanned, and it is part Shelly's like genius eye and sense for aesthetics, like knowing that she had to have both of us on. And partly just that before Laura and I started working for Shelly, we were already very good friends and had known each other for years. We are effectively from the same town. We both live in the same place. We both studied at the same university course. And well, I mean, the truth is I'm inspired by Laura. The very first time we met was at a zine fair, like an art fair, and I went up to her table and it was being manned by one of her friends, I think. And so she wasn't there, and I was just looking at her comics, and I'd seen her around before, and I got so excited and I went, I love Laura Hall. And she was stood right behind me, and that's how we met. But no, we didn't confer or anything. By complete chance, we're both using this like indigo instead of black. We just have the same sort of artistic preferences. This image that you've got up right now, John, has got to be, oh my gosh, my favorite to come out of this project so far. So
yeah, great.
this was a whole saga, but I'll simplify it just to say that I did the idea and the roughs for it, and Laura just took it all the way to its beautiful completion with her just stunning, outstanding lines and colors. It looks, I mean, as divine as the subject matter implies, as far as I'm
Oh, it's great.
If I can just chime in and say that was the very first collaboration that I had Jen and Laura do together. And before this moment, I knew that they enjoyed doing their own things because they're both very skilled cartoonists in their own right. They both write and draw. But I knew for Filth and Grammar that I needed somebody to work with me this summer and to really hustle. So of course, when it came down to it, the people I wanted to hire were both busy with either full-time jobs or with a family or both. And that's exactly why I hired both Jen and Laura, because if I hired one, we might not get the project done because I hired the most sought after people on earth. But also, I wanted to celebrate the art of collaboration because so many of the young cartoonists and artists are doing their own thing, and they have over the past maybe 10 years. It's quite rare to find people who actually seek out a collaborator in terms of pencils, inking, and coloring. And I'm so old school. John, as we know, I've been editing since 1988. And to me, that's how it's done if you want it done on time on a monthly. And so part of my shtick was I'm going to do Filth and Grammar. It's going to be part how it's done, how to make a comic, how to make a great comic, but also it's going to be the art of collaboration because everybody on the team is super critical. And it's from the editor's point of view, which I am told is unprecedented. There have been comics about how to write, how to draw. There have been comics about writing and drawing. Of course, there's Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics, but I don't believe there's ever been a comic that goes over the nuts and bolts and actually takes two artists, two young up and comers, grabs them by the shirt collar and says, hey, now you guys have to work together. Now you guys have to trust each other. So I'm going to brag about Jen for a minute because I want to see her blush again. But Jen is the one who came up with this idea of creation. She said, I have this idea. I'm going to do a rough sketch. So she did a very rough sketch. I wasn't 100% sure why she was doing it. And so she said creation. And of course, I thought she was like making a joke about Creation Records. So I started to talk about Oasis and no one on the call was laughing. And I thought, okay, wait a minute. I see what she's doing. And so this seemed like the perfect opportunity to have Laura take the baton, take the pencil out of Jen's hand, do the inks and the color. So this symbolizes what I call the click. This is how you know you've brought the right people on for the job. And that's a critical chapter in my book. It's not just about picking the person who does that stellar, illuminating, perfect cover. It's hiring the right people and hiring the right people who work well together. And that begins and ends with trust and respect. So that's what you're seeing here. So if you think this piece is cool, you're going to get this in spades because the book is going to be, it's going to be part Laura doing her thing, part Jen doing her thing, part Sophie, who's coming in as like sort of the graphic design mastermind. She's a big part of this too. You might know her as the colorist of Bitterroot, the Eisner and Ringo Award winner, nominated again. I'll have you know. Sophie's the reason this team is together. And I'll also I'll say it briefly because I want Jen to speak a little bit more than me today. But I met Laura through Sophie on Insider Art because Laura did a great zine and Sophie hired her to do a 2-page zine. When I was working on Heavy Rotation, which John, you were so kind.
Stand by.
A great show about Heavy Rotation.
Yeah.
So I hired Sophie to do an illustration. Sophie couldn't finish the illustration on time. She had other commitments. She felt terrible. She didn't want to be fired. So she said, can I bring someone in to help? And because I think Sophie is the greatest newcomer to comics in the past 15 years, I said, yes, I trust you. She brought in Jen, and the rest is history.
That's awesome. It looks great, Jen. Nice going. And Sophie, congratulations on the accolades and the awards. And I'm glad you're at least with us on text to occasionally chime in, because, yeah, you do great work. And I'm glad I could have the opportunity even this way to tell you how much I appreciate your work. And Jen, everything looks great. I'm excited to sit down with Heavy Rotation. Also, Shell, you'll forgive me because I do still have questions for you as well. Tom King and I were talking on Friday night, and someone asked, and a very innocent, I know, name dropping again, can't help it.
Uh-oh.
No. You don't worry, nothing bad, everything good. But no, someone was saying, hey, how do I break into DC and Marvel? And Tom was very generous in terms of, well, sometimes you can walk in with your portfolio and get a job. And I'm like, wait a minute, let's talk reality. And you can hear the edge in my voice, because it's like, it's not just having the talent to draw. It's also being able to, first of all, storytell with your art.
Sure.
And secondly, and equally important, if not more, and as an editor, I expect you to tell me differently or agree with me, hit deadlines.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
especially monthly comics are a deadline business. Don't worry, Jen, it's cool. I mean, no, but honestly, if you're trying to work, make comics for companies that put out monthly products,
Yeah.
I mean, you could be as talented as hell. And I know for a fact, DC and Marvel have been great in the last few years, realizing, something, we got plenty of white guys making this stuff. Let's get people of color. Let's get more women. Let's get more people of orientation. Truly, and that's great.
Mm-hmm.
But with that comes the expectation of, can you hit a 30-day deadline every month? And
Right.
some of them can't because they're brand new, and that's okay.
Right.
But it's like you got, so yeah, Shell, respond to what I'm blathering about.
Well, I thought you were going to tell the Tom King intern story, because
By all means, you can tell the Tom King intern story if you'd like to.
the short story said Tom King was an intern at Vertigo. I was too much of a superstar in my own mind to really pay any attention to him. He was not under my purview.
Okay.
I spent many years supervising interns, good and bad. In fact, my favorite intern, and here's where I get to kiss butt, James Tynan was my favorite intern.
Oh, that's great. That's terrific.
So good.
Great
so
guy.
Smart, so personable, and asked
Really good guy.
questions without being annoying.
Yes.
So those are also important things. You have to, not only do you need the talent, but just as important, you actually need to have people skills. And that's something that I think they don't always teach you in art school. But to go back to what John was saying, look, if the book doesn't come out on time, it's the editor's fault. Full stop. I'm always angry that there aren't categories for the Eisners for best editor, not because I think I'm going to clean up, but the editor is often the most overlooked person in the book. And without the editor, you're done, you're toast. If the editor's doing their job, your book doesn't ship late, because the editor knows when to pull the plug on you. So the editor knows if you're not keeping up, if you're nasty, if your art sucks and you're not taking direction, you should be fired. And that's not personal. You're hired to do a job. But if you're wonderful and you're struggling because you're new and you're slow, that's okay. The editor should put a fill-in issue to help you make up some time, or the editor should get an inker to help you. Or the editor should maybe try you out on a backup story before they give you the entire carte blanche on that new monthly book. So editors really have to know their stuff. And that's what this book is about. And I do want to say, look, I don't think I'm all that. I know people will disagree. I've been around a long time. I've gleaned a lot from my bosses over the years, and sometimes from bosses who were not comic book editors. I've learned a lot along the way. I've asked a ton of questions. And there were people in my early days, like my first boss, Diana Schutz, who I always give props to just for hiring me. And Matt Wagner, who was like, okay, legit, my first crush in comics. He was married. It was nothing. But I did blush every time I talked to him on the phone. And he was really patient with me. As you know, John, he's like one of the masters of graphic storytelling and design. He's like one of my favorite cartoonists that I'm not married to, but he was really good to me because he would take the time to explain things. So I learned more from him as an ingenue editorial assistant, stuffing comps and answering phone calls than anybody. And we're still friends, and I love him to death. But I had a lot of art crushes on the way, and I only married one, thankfully. But yes, this book is all about a lot of things that you wouldn't think about. It's my pet peeves, and I hate typos and tangents, but that's only the beginning. It's cheat sheets. I'm going to have a list of the most common spelling errors, the most common errors of deciding when to use a semicolon, when to use a colon, when to not use either, when to use the double dash versus the ellipsis, why you should never cross balloon tails, or I will do this. And I'm pretending it's a knife or a dart if that's too violent. Things like that. So you're going to learn pet peeves, pro tips from people like Grant Morrison. And in fact, I got to give Grant props because I'm also writing a few stories about him that he's going to approve before Jen and Laura draw them. But Grant has been a huge part of my learning curve, let's say, just because working with him on the Invisibles was definitely one of my favorite experiences coming of age in comics. So there's going to be a lot of fun stories. He is 100% responsible for, are you sitting down?
I am.
Me discovering one of my favorite bands of the 90s. Does anyone know what it would be? Take a guess. Jen, you weren't born.
Don't say Oasis.
No, not Oasis. Ooh. But another band, a band that was one of the two bands, in my opinion, that started Britpop.
Supergrass, perhaps?
No, not at all. Suede.
Oh.
He introduced me to Suede, and I've never been the same since then. So I have to give him props.
That's great. That's fantastic. Ramsey has another good question here. Were there any reference points for writing this auto-bio and how to guide, like William Goldman's Adventures in the Screen Trade or Patti Smith's Just Kids? Good question.
That is a great question. I love memoir, and I've read quite a few of them over the years. I have been working on mine for quite a while, and it only crystallized over the pandemic what it should really be. Because I started it probably in 2016. I had just left DC. I had the whole summer when I couldn't work, right before I started Black Crown for IDW. And I did a lot of free writing, and I didn't like what I was writing. I was getting a lot off my chest, but it wasn't positive. So I knew Filth and Grammar was always going to be the title, but I didn't know exactly what it was going to be because I didn't want it to be a scathing tell-all. Because what the hell? I'm in comics for life. So I can take some of the garbage people that I learned from, how not to do certain things, how not to talk a certain way, how not to behave in a meeting. And I can take what's even better, which is what I learned from the fantastic people, and celebrate comics. And most important, celebrate comics as an art form. Because while we're definitely making strides in considering the graphic novel and the comic book much more than just an outlet for men to oogle women in, bathing suits running around in high heels, which Jen and I do not approve of. There's nothing worse than the objectification of women on that level. We need to celebrate the art form as storytelling and
Absolutely.
as this an immediate way to connote our feelings about the world around us. And there's nothing I'm prouder of than being able to do that from soup to nuts myself with a great coterie of young talents. Because if I was lazy, I would have just called my friends, or I would have threatened my husband to draw the whole thing, which might not come out till 2050, but it would be beautiful. But instead, I'm challenging myself. So I'm sharing, old school periodical purist Shelly Bond's 2 cents, but I'm also getting the now and the new from amazing artists like Imogen, Blush on Q, Sophie, who's texting to us and
Indeed.
blushing in her own way, and Laura, who I'm certain is also watching and doing some kind of dance because she's a good dancer, or so I'm told.
Okay.
Yep.
No, honestly, Shell, truly, with especially these independent projects lately, the amount of new talent that you're exposing us all to has been fantastic. So I'm really glad that you're giving people like Imogen and Sophie and Laura, the chance to shine in this project. I think that's great.
Thanks. And you know what? I'm doing it also because, when I'm on social media, I often notice editors trolling around, people who have full-time jobs saying things like, hey, anyone want to do comics? I got jobs, blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking to myself, if you're here, I'm glad you're not on my payroll because you're not working. You have to be reading comics, supporting your local comic book shop, walk at the walk, find your own people. I've had so many friends and colleagues who see the people I'm working with and suddenly make the phone call and suddenly make the connections. And, you can call it stealing. It's not. I want people to continue working. But the people I respect in comics are the editors who know how to curate and the editors who know what they like and how to bring people together to not only create something that the editor likes, but that everyone on the team approves of and takes the form to the next level. And to me, that's how you put your visual signature on a comic book. And maybe that's why editors are often overlooked in the credits. I disagree with the notion that you have a really good editor if you don't notice the editor there. Au contraire, I think that actually is disrespectful to the editor. But a great editor makes everyone on the team look good, including herself, himself, themselves. And I stand by that.
I don't blame you. And Jen being, as you said, was it discovering Laura's art, at a zine convention.
Yeah.
Man, I'll tell you, in Chicago, we have Cake, which is a great mini comic and zine festival that's only been created in within the last 10 years or so. And I love going there because, that is kind of where I'll discover new art and new creators and stuff. I think it's terrific.
That's great.
Yeah, well, again, though, just like Shell said, I mean, this you got to keep your eyes open of where the cool new stuff is coming from. And I mean, like Shell, again, I don't want you to necessarily give away trade secrets that you're not doing in the book. But I mean, in terms of just hunting around and finding, the new people and stuff, what do you do? Where do you go?
I keep my eyes open and I just pound the pavement. I've been lucky enough to travel over the past 4 or 5 years. I mean, indie comics are just my heart and bone. I came into comics through the indie scene, Love and Rockets, Grendel, Moonshadow, the artier stuff. Wasn't a superhero fan. So when we worked at Black Crown, I set myself on what I called a Comics and Chaos tour. So we launched Black Crown and I did a 3 comic shop jump in London. And I went to stores and I left stickers and I talked to the retailers. And, that's how you do it. You look around.
Yes,
It's word of mouth too. If I like someone's art on Instagram, I follow them and I follow who they follow. And that's important. But what I really can't stand is, someone who's just kind of waiting for the great artists to come to them. People that are, at a stage in their career where maybe they worked with an Eisner team, an Eisner Award winning team, or they have friends who are publishers. To me, you can never be lazy if you want to be next wave. And that's what I strive for. To me, I feel that it's my social imperative and my artistic imperative to keep creating comics and making the best comics. And that's why things like, Heavy Rotation, Hey Amateur, these are books that took so much time and energy to put together. And I was lucky I was able to do them. And I was lucky I had the time to do them during the pandemic. And I you know, I tell people, if you want to be an editor, you don't have to be a terrific artist. That's why you hire artists.
Sure.
If you want to write for me, I want your writing to be so inspired and so original and so authentic that when I read the script, I want to actually either crawl through glass to get to the next issue, or I want to quit my day job and go to art school so I can draw it. That's what I expect of my writers. I expect the same thing of my artists. You know, I want people that work with me to be 110% into the project. Even if I get on their nerves a little bit, I expect the dedication that I'm putting into their work for them to put into the project. So I'm only looking for people who are that committed and that passionate.
Are you able to get granular with artists and talk about panel composition and things like that, as far as giving them art direction in terms of storytelling and things like that?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, without that, an editor is nothing. So I started to say before, you know, I recommend to editors that you try every part of the job. And I'm not just talking the talk. I taught myself to letter comics. I'm certain that Todd Klein doesn't have to worry about his Eisner collection. I'm not coming to steal it. I'm not going to get my own, but I have a much greater sense about kerning and letting and even more tangents and how the tales are supposed to arc, because I've studied it and I've talked to people like Todd Klein and Clem Robbins. I've sent them my lettering work. They've given me tips. So even if you can't draw, when you're editing, you need to draw shapes. And I will be teaching people ways to figure out how to clearly articulate how to change something to an artist. Now, of course, you need to have a good basic knowledge of anatomy. I do recommend you do some life drawing. My life drawing looks like one thing. You know, my basically characters from the Peanuts gang, drawn from like a 6-year-old's point of view. It's how I draw. I draw one face. That's okay. The editors have to understand left to right, top to bottom, panel composition, page composition, page balance, graphic balance, how to use negative space. We will go over all these things in the book.
Great.
And I'm certain the terminology is going to be important. The lexicon or parlance of comics is critical, because I know when I was coming of age in the 90s through comics, for anyone to take me seriously, I had to know things like horizon line, vanishing point, the difference between hue and saturation. You will be learning these terms, because if you want an artist or a writer or a letterer or colorist to respect you, you do need to speak the language, even if you can't do the physical skill. And that to me comes back to respecting somebody else's craft, and also admitting when you make a mistake, because we're human. It happens.
Sure. Jen, where do you learn your storytelling? Where have you gotten your cues as you've been developing your skills?
In terms of direct learning, I a year ago graduated from my illustration degree at Plymouth Uni, which was the best. If you're in the UK, you want to make comics, try Plymouth Uni illustration.
Honestly, that is incredibly valuable, because I will hear about American schools that various people were, recommend, from the Kubert School and Pratt and SCAD and stuff like that. So it's great to hear. And repeat it again, the UK school you just mentioned.
It's the University of Plymouth, so it might be called Plymouth Uni. I think it changed while I was there.
Okay.
It's just the illustration course. But in terms of more like organic learning, I've been reading comics since I was this big, which I still am. Like my parents had a collection of comics, but especially like every single Calvin and Hobbes.
Oh,
and
that's
even
great.
though I didn't understand them at all, like, because Calvin is 6, but he doesn't talk like a 6-year-old. I was 6 at the time, so I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like friends with this cartoon boy because he's my age and he's like funny and naughty. And it was that like, there's like people on my bookshelf that I can like not just read but like see and connect with. That was like, I have to make comics. And I did detour into music for a few of my teen years. most of my teen years. But even that whole time, still reading comics, got really into manga as well. And then like realized when it was time for me to go to university that that was right in my heart. So I didn't really know how to like really find the information that I needed to like hone my skills and become a comics writer and artist.
Yeah.
So I emailed Rob Davis, who did the Motherless Oven trilogy, as well as like Don Quixote and a bunch of other amazing stuff. And he sent me back.
Phenomenal
Sorry?
cartoonist. I just wanted to chime in and say Rob Davis did quite a bit of work for me at Vertigo, and since Vertigo worked for Black Crown.
Yeah,
Phenomenal drafts person and
amazing.
expert record collection. If he's missing anything, don't look at me.
And he's very local to where I'm from. Like,
Oh, that's great.
practically neighbors. So I
Oh,
emailed
wow.
him, sent me the best email ever that was like, I can't really tell you like how to live your life or what choices to make, and then just gave me like the best advice ever anyway. And
That's
he was
great.
saying that either you can go and study like specific comics university courses, like there's one that his friend runs in Wales, I think he mentioned. I'm sorry, I don't remember specifically what it is.
No problem.
But he was saying go for do that or go for a broader education in illustration. So I took that route. And aside from that, it's just my hobby to watch like analysis videos. And like, to be fair, I do have them on in the background, so I'm not exactly really learning all that much from them. But just having that mindset and being lucky enough to go to a really, really good university and like don't be scared to email your heroes, because either they like won't reply because they're busy and that's fine, or they'll say something really cool to you. So that's my pro tip.
Believe me, coming from broadcasting, I did the same thing. Observations, but also getting in touch with my heroes and learning from the best. All right, I'm going to need a minute to regroup, and remember what I was going to ask you regarding all that. But in the meantime, I do want to get Matt's question, because I think while he says any chance that Shelly will start her own comic book company in the future, essentially that's what Shell's doing. I mean, she has done this, and that's what her Kickstarters are kind of all about, that she's going directly to the people. But yeah, go elaborate on that, Shell.
Yes, well, I want to elaborate on that, but before I do, and I'm showing you off-register stickers, because basically Philip and I have started Off-Register Press as our landing page, but also our mini publishing company, because do it yourself. My God, it's liberating, and I can't stress it enough. Whatever platform you use for self-publishing, because there are a few now. Kickstarter's been tremendous for me, but yeah, be fearless. Go for it. One of the things I do want to just jump back and say, Jen is being very modest. When I looked at Jen's work, I instantly thought to myself, this is the next Becky Cloonan, because I discovered Becky Cloonan's work through mini comics when I went to Hanley's Universe. When I was living in New York City, every weekend I would go to 2 comic book stores. I'd go to Hanley's and I'd go to St. Mark's. I loved St. Mark's because I would spend my weekends there, and props to Mitch and all the St. Mark's comics crew, because they're I still consider that my local, even though I'm sweltering in LA right now. Jen's work to me looks like Becky's work in the sense that I can tell she's a superstar. And that's what Becky is. I knew Becky was a great writer long before she started writing Punisher. She is a genius, and I've been calling Jen Genius, which is genius. But I want to say one other thing. She reminds me a lot of Becky. She's petite, she's smart as a whip, she's funny, she's devoted to comics. But I also see something in Jen that I saw in Duncan Fegredo. Now, of course, Duncan is one of my contemporaries, and when I started at Vertigo, Chris Pacello's work, Duncan's work, and Philip's work, and Glenn Dillon's work, I just wanted to wrap my arms around them and never let them go. They were the innovators of frenetic, urgent, modern storytelling, irreverent, And Duncan was the master of taking you by the neck, pulling you in the book, not letting you go, dragging you all the way through, making you beg for more so you go back to study the work because you couldn't believe the experience you just had. And I can only equate it to, and Jen's heard this before, but Joe Strummer as my favorite frontman from The Clash, because he could do it all. He did it all. I'm sorry. I always wanted to play rhythm guitar because Joe. It was like an appendage, right? So you are the Joe Strummer of the next gen Mangle.
That means everything.
I love that. I love that. For Grado, right? Isn't he part of Men of Action with Joe Casey and those guys, or no?
He's not, but he
Okay,
was the
I'm an
artist
idiot.
of
Go on.
Enigma. You probably remember Enigma. So he worked with Peter
Oh,
Milligan
sure.
on Enigma. I worked with Duncan on many projects. He was my cover painter on Lucifer. He worked with me on Books of Magic, Life During Wartime. He did guest artist issues. And we worked together many, many times. He did a series called Girl, which I think is being collected through Karen Berger's Berger Books.
Oh, that's great. Fantastic. At Dark Horse. That's great.
I'm not 100% sure about that. So
I hope so. Yeah.
I hope so too. I loved working on the book. The book was everything. But yes, in terms of a company, look, right now, offregister.press is how Philip and I produce our own personal work. If somebody wants to make us an offer and pour tons of money into our company, or a film and TV studio believes in us, we are always looking for great business partners. So I say that to you, in an age where you see so many media people saying, we want IP. What I do and what Philip does, we make great comics. So the stories we tell are absolutely 110% meant to be told on the comic book page, and also digitally after and as we're putting them on paper.
Sure.
So if people are interested in working with us, that's fine. But I want to be clear that what we do in comics is about the art and the alchemy and the madness and joy of comic books, the purity of comics as an art form, not just IP for other applications in games, streaming, or otherwise.
I'm with you. No, and again, it's and mentioning Duncan's work on Girls and the fact that Karen might be republishing some of this old Vertigo stuff. Vertigo was always ahead of its time in terms of tackling subjects beyond obvious, and certainly beyond the obvious of American comics. And Jen, I know the British experience is different. That yes, occasionally, and that's what I love when British and really global creators beyond the States tackle American subjects, because they bring a different perspective to them, and we get very interesting stories, even in the superhero genre, that you're not expecting, because there's just some quality that they bring to the table that Americans take for granted, or we're just kind of stuck in our parameters of what is accepted in superhero comics. But again, as I get older, I'm I'm older than Shell, but I appreciate. Well, that's it's still older, but no, we've evolved. The medium has evolved here in America. It is catching up with the rest of the world. The Japanese have been ahead of us for decades.
Oh, yeah.
The Brits have been ahead of us for some time as well. Truly, and that's why it's like finally comics is being appreciated as a medium. And it's stepping beyond its American perception as a genre, as opposed to a medium.
And diversity and inclusion, so important. Jen, I know you can speak to that. My God.
Well, yes, from as many different perspectives as you want. Truly, the only angles that I'm missing is that I'm not trans and I'm not Jewish, but I've got everything else.
I've got the Jewish part right here. I've got the Jewish part for you. So this whole thing, this filth and grammar, we cover all the bases, John. If you're, if you want to know if we're balanced, we got you.
Cool. That's great. No, that's fantastic. More voices have always been welcome, and it's great to see. And then truly, when I say voices, I mean art as well as words. So that's cool. I'm sorry, is this an example, Jen, of your stuff?
That's one of mine.
Very cool.
However, I do give 100% credit, obviously, to Sophie, who has been saying for like weeks, like every time we're in one of our weekly little Zoom calls meetings and we're thinking about like promotional art, badges, pins, charms. Sophie always says, skull and cross pens. And we all go, hmm. But like, I knew that the most important thing for making this idea happen is just making it be an image. It just has to be an image, and then it becomes real.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's hilarious.
We're John, you just got the debut of that art. It arrived this morning. And
that's nice.
I fainted.
Very fresh.
I fainted. I mean, this to me is everything. This could be a tattoo. This could be a t-shirt. This could be a sticker. I'm not getting a tattoo. I'm not allowed. But
tattoo. Very cute.
It would be an adorable tattoo. That's true. I don't have any tattoos either. Sorry.
We are merch.
No, I don't know about your experience, Shell, but honestly, I saw so many of my father's friends who got their tattoos literally either during World War II or after World War II. And by the time I saw them, the great eagle would be like this because of their shriveled skin. And I'm just like, yeah, I don't want that to happen. You know, it's like, this used to be an anchor. And now it looks like a ball of, felt. And I'm like, yeah, great. But it's the truth, and it's like, yeah, so nobody needs to see that. So there you go. Was that TMI? I'm sorry, kids.
We can make a temporary tattoo. Jen, let's make it into a temporary tattoo for John. How about that?
There you go. There you go. Absolutely. Yes, indeed.
Love it. Yeah.
Yeah. What I mean, again, you've got, as you do for all of your projects, Shell, you have great stickers and ephemera that you include along with, the book itself.
Right.
I mean, I'm assuming this image is also a sticker.
Oh yes, that's part of the swag goodie bag, as it's called. And yeah, couldn't resist. I mean, when Jen drew that, I mean, if I had been thinking about firing Jen, I couldn't possibly do that after someone makes me look like that. Like there was never any, like seriously.
God.
What's important for me with this book, it's my magnum opus. You do one of these in a lifetime. So I wanted to make sure it was affordable for every backer. And I understand that a lot of us have been pushed because of the pandemic. A lot of people lost jobs. I was on unemployment for a while. I get it. So I made sure that each level was as inexpensive as possible. But John, you know how expensive it is to make a book like this. So,
yes.
I did Hey Amateur as a Kickstarter, and man, it took a long time. We crushed our target goal, but it was $40,000 because guess what? It costs a lot of money to make a beautiful hardcover and pay all the people, all the talent in here. With a book like Filth and Grammar, we were able to offer the PDF at $10. It's 160 pages, so I'd like to think that's worth your fancy coffee or lip liner, whatever you spend $10. Trust me. It's
worth my lip liner money. Absolutely, Shell.
It's a cheap cocktail, right? For $20, if you take your frenemy out for a cup of coffee, there you go. And why would you want to do that anyway? Don't spend time with a frenemy or a doppelganger. It's not worth it. $20 gets you so much. It gets you the soft cover, and we've crushed 3 stretch goals. So not only do you get the soft cover with French flaps, by the way, which give me the chills in the best possible way. You get a book plate. You get a 5x7 art print of the cover.
Wow.
You get for $50, we just announced the sticker sheet by Miss Jen, who is
welcome.
ultimate in terms of sticker sheet design. And part of the sticker sheet was the fun time Jen and I had figuring out like what could we make available, because honestly, I do not think I'm all that. I do this to Jen because it's like, you know, what she does, but I'm a behind the scenes person. You know, I really am not the kind of person who wants to be in the limelight. So I said to Jen, I don't want it to just be like different hairstyles or different dresses. Although Jen and I are very into the same fashion and like,
True.
you know, that kind of stuff. But we came up with some really cute alternatives. We've got like a true editing crimes book and the boombox, of course, some headphones, a lot of fun things. I think you have the sticker sheet that you can show us, John.
Yeah, actually, I'm bringing up the Kickstarter pitch because I don't have the sticker sheet loaded, but what I do, I can share here, hopefully.
Yeah,
There it
it's
is.
definitely I'm trying to update the story.
Yeah, let's get down here. I'll scroll down to the sticker sheet.
It's also
there's
it's
process.
also worth it to kind of, when you're done showing the sticker sheet, let's scroll back and see. There's a sticker sheet right there.
Yes. Yes.
You've got a lightning bolt. I mean, seriously, what does that connote to everybody? You know, it's
Shelly's icon.
Bowie,
Indeed.
right?
Yep.
And my favorite is the Filth, the bottle of Filth, red Filth, which is like, you know, get ink on your hands. I think editors need to stop being afraid. The best editors ask the right questions and they give the right direction, and they also know when to step back and take a deep breath and not put their thumbprints on everything. So you will find out my tricks of the trade. And it's important, again, to say, this is just my definitive version on how I edit comics. You know, I've got a whole system of how I edit scripts. It's a 3-part system. It's not for the faint-hearted. I call it script autopsy for a reason. The editor should be going through mental somersaults, kind of like what we're seeing on the screen.
What the hell was that? I know. Sorry, kids. I didn't mean to drop acid at that moment. I apologize.
If the editor doesn't spend a good few hours editing your script, it wasn't worth the week that you spent writing it. I mean, I can say that full stop and mean it. So I think a lot of editors think that they're readers, and a lot of editors are just paper pushers. And sometimes it's not their fault. Sometimes their bosses don't have a method and don't teach anymore. You know, I can't speak to how the corporate, you know, life is, because I haven't worked in corporate comics in many, many years. So maybe they train. I have no idea. I can only judge from what I see on the shelves. And I can only share my personal knowledge of what works for me. And the best thing you can do in your editing career is grab what works for you, and then everything else, you know, push it aside, because that's how you really come up with your own personal editing style.
Very cool. Jen, I wanted to ask about, as you were saying about how Rob Davies is really in your community pre-COVID, and now, well, again, I don't know what level things are in your community, but like, would you get together with other artists and do drink and draw kind of hangouts or whatever? And, you know,
Yes, we used to straight up have drink and draw every
Sure.
week at our local cafe. The town where Laura and I are from has this incredible indie comics scene. I mean, there's 2 different universities that both have an illustration degree on them, as well as like arts college stuff going on in general, plus loads of people who just make comics and zines independently. So, I mean, yeah, we're not at post-COVID yet, but pre-COVID, it was booming here. Every few months would be a big like art and zine fair. You know, as I mentioned, that's where Laura and I met, but also so many other brilliant artists.
Well, there you go. I assume this is someone that knows you from that scene. They say you're sorely missed, I guess.
I can't tell who this is from that username.
The Vasic.
It doesn't surprise me that everyone misses Jen, but I just want to make a general announcement. She's busy working, so please don't bug her. She's got a very busy summer of Filth and Grammar that she's going to go back to as soon as we hang up. So just know that she is looked after and she's doing spectacular work. Or my name isn't Bond.
Atta girl. Is this your work, Jen?
That's one of mine. You can always tell if something's mine or Laura's, even though we use the same sorts of colors and we have similar proportions and angles to our work. if it's got really soft and organic, like dreamy, comfy shapes, it's one of Laura's. And if it's very like pointy, angular, sort of geometric, it's one of mine.
Excellent. Wait, I see another. Oh, there you go. Shelly as well. Very nice. Oh, everyone's missed. There you go. Very nice. And another shout out from Saeed there, Shell.
Hey,
So
thanks
that's
for
cool.
joining us tonight. I'm so excited to see people chiming in. It must be said that really right from the beginning, this team was rock solid. And again, it was fortuitous that Laura and Jen knew each other. And that really, it goes back to Sophie. I met Sophie only about a year and a half ago through Sanford Green on Bitter Root.
Oh,
Sanford
yeah.
actually,
Sure, yeah.
brought her onto the book as a colorist. She's been an absolute knockout, 100% professional. She just is, I think, and I've said it before, and I nominated her for best colorist for the Eisners. Now, I think there should be a category for best new person in comics because, and in fact, I told her this. I did speak with the Eisner committee because I felt like she should be considered as a best newcomer because she is an artist. She's a colorist. To me, a colorist is an artist.
Of
She's
course.
also a costume designer. She's
wow.
she's just like a tremendous talent. And she's also a fine editor. She did edit a section of Insider Art, and that's where she brought a lot of those badass British women and non-binary people to the table and helped create just an incredible work of art in Insider Art, which I'm referring to now as I Know What You Did Last Pandemic Summer. And we continue this horror movie motif. Jen just did a piece the other day where she answers the question, how do you know what a serial comma is? And can it kill you? She answered that through her art.
What serial comma does it have anything to do with a serial killer? Yeah.
Hey, look who's joining us. One of the brothers. It's Fabio Moon, which is lovely that he's chiming
Fabio.
in.
Thank you so much for joining us, Fabio.
Man,
also a fine cartoonist in his own right.
Of course.
Star.
I met him in person. They came on my show years ago when one of their and I can't two brothers. I want to say Fabio was the book.
Yeah,
and it was so great. And then I met them at Rose City back in 2019, face to face. Oh, here we go. And yeah, Fabio's right. I believe there was a best newcomer at the Eisners for some years. Yeah, the Russ Manning award is for the newcomer. But you're right, Shell. In terms of it, usually goes to an artist, a penciler, and they should have it for almost really penciler, inker, colorist. I agree with you.
Or maybe
there should be like 3 awards.
What about
editor? And editor. You're absolutely right. But yeah, it was great when I met Fabio and Gabe. They're like, have we done your show? And I'm like, yeah, actually, you guys did it a couple of years ago. I'm like, whenever you guys are ready with something new. So Fabio, when you guys are ready, please come back. You'll forgive me for glowing about the fact that Fabio is joining us. But it honestly, that is the greatest compliment when I am broadcast or streaming, not broadcasting, and pros come on and chime in. So that's wonderful to see. Thank you, Fabio. It's good to see it.
Yes, and hopefully Fabio will reach out to his friend and colleague Becky Clunan and say, Becky, Shelly's talking shit about you. Not really, but Shelly is talking to a young artist who you would like because she was inspired by your work.
Yeah, Becky's great.
Nothing cooler than that. Nothing.
I'm with you, man. Oh, and all right, I've got another image I haven't put up yet. And I don't know if this is you, Jen, or Laura, but I had to do this because it is word balloon. It is not bubble.
Oh, yeah. So that's Laura. That is a sketch that we actually didn't end up using, but it's very close. Laura did a few sketches for a sticker that's going to be available in our swag bag. And I have to say, this is, we've been having fun. It's all a great laugh until it gets to the battle, not between Oasis and Blur, but the battle between Word Balloon and Word Bubble. And Jen told me she's not going to let go.
Are you a word bubble person, Jen? Say it again, Jen.
I will.
She'll fight to the
Sorry,
death.
so I will occasionally compromise, but usually, because I know I'm gonna get in big trouble if I say speech bubble, which is, it's just a regional thing. That's just what we call
You're
them. If I
teasing.
tell any of my contemporaries here in Plymouth it's a freaking word balloon, they're gonna have my head. So sometimes I say like dialogue oval or text
Dialogue
confused, just to
oval.
it.
No, you
Is
can
that
all
being
listen.
looked at through a microscope? What's going on there exactly?
Look.
That's dialogue oval,
No,
everybody.
I'm gonna say
Just to
I'm
avoid
changing my show's name to Dialogue Oval. Welcome, everybody. Jesus.
That is
Sounds
too
like something that happens in a doctor's office. I don't know if that's good, Jen. I'm going to be honest with you. Come on now.
Okay, I'm gonna say I know one person that agrees with me, and that's Diana Schutz, because Diana taught that to me way back in 1988, and I know Fabio and Gabriel worked with Diana, and she was strict. She was a terrific boss because she really showed me the ropes, and that was something she insisted on, and it's just I took it with me. So I'm gonna demand it, and I just noticed Sophie says bubble forever, and I'm gonna fire 2 people on this show. All right.
No, I hear you, Sophie. And yeah, you're right. Thought Bubble Festival.
oh,
I
or bubble
understand.
fest. Exactly.
But there you go. That's the distinction between dialogue and thoughts. There's a
Well,
thought bubble and there's a word balloon.
We will definitely have a page on this in the comic, and there will be blood.
Metagen takeover, rage about flipping word balloon. I can't get behind it. It feels weird even to say.
That's so
I'm
funny.
so sorry, John.
No, it's all good. Well, truly, when I came up with the podcast 16 years ago in 2005, I'm like, what am I going to call it? And I'm like, well, word balloon makes sense because it's a dialogue about comic books. And that's a dialogue, it's a dialogue balloon. And I'm like, although my father would kill me. Happy Father's Day, everybody. My father would kill me because it starts with a W, and he would say, dumbass, if you're going to name a business, have it at the top of the alphabet, not at the bottom of the alphabet. And he's right. I don't know what I could have called it.
No, I think your dad is wrong in this case. I think you couldn't have picked a more perfect title. And I refer to you as John Word Balloon, and people know who I'm talking about.
Well, that's certainly my Twitter handle. And
yeah.
I should have grabbed just pure word balloon earlier, as wordballoon.com I was able to get very early on. But yeah, I kind of thought it was clever. And also kind of like, I don't know if Jen knows this reference, and Shell, you might not either. Word jazz, the Ken Nordine was this like great spoken word artist that started in the 50s during the Beat generation and that. And I'm like, well, if it's, word balloon, I'm like, it really could be any conversation could count as a word balloon, because the podcast itself, the MP3, is a word balloon. So I'm like, yeah, I'm like, this works. So yeah, I don't regret it 16 years later. Sorry, Jen, you're wrong.
No, that's valid. But you would be wrong in the UK.
You're allowed. Although I'm technically Gen X, you could give me an okay boomer with my bullshit. So don't worry about it, Jen. It's all right. Exactly. Strike one.
We're going to give one strike to
for attacking Jen. I understand. That's
attacking
totally
Jen.
fine.
That wasn't very nice.
No, you're right about that. I'm teasing you, so it's all good. No, that's great, guys. I love it. That's fine. And truly, again, yeah, you're a good kid, Jen. It's all good. You'll forgive me as an old man, but yes, I'm always happy to hear how people refer to what's going on and everything. So it's cool. It's cool.
And it's fair enough to say that in Filth and Grammar, this is what's going to make it so modern. I'm going to be taken to task sometimes because I'm not a kid, even though Jen draws me looking like one. I know I'm very aware of my 3 decades in comics, and I'm not the end all. So what you're going to get is
not true.
I hope
exactly like this.
I hope I give everybody foundation and a fun time, because if you're laughing right now and you're having a good time with us, that's what I want to happen when you read the book. Because, to me, comics are best when they take you away from just the crap in your life. It's an escape, but they also educate you behind your back when you're not even looking.
Absolutely.
And that's what I intend to do with this book. Because for me, I want my imprimatur on things that are built to last. So I hope this will be a textbook It's going to be written for teen on up, so I really want people in their teens who aren't sure what to do with the rest of their lives to read this book and say, I want to be a comic book editor, or I want to be like Jen and be this incredible cartoonist at 22, and I want to be an art star at 23, because this stuff can happen. And it's about dedication, it's about talent, it's about professionalism, it's about making great art, collaborating, and just having a kick-ass time.
That's great, guys. I hear you. Let's wrap up and remind people. I've got it up right now for the audio audience. I've got the URL up there, kickstarter.com/projects/sxbond/filth-and-grammar. But if you just Google search for the audio audience, Kickstarter, Shelly Bond, Filth and Grammar, you'll get the link and you'll get there. And no, it's a smart book. I'm glad you made it, Shell. It's something you and I didn't even know. Maybe you were already making this when I talked to you about, you ought to give seminars on how to edit and everything. So I'm glad you're doing this.
I've been working on it behind your back for 33 years, John, and I'm ready to get it done with the right team. That's where it starts. Fabio says good editing is so important. So true. Bring your gloves. If you're going to read this book and be an editor, bring your gloves. You're going to be throwing a lot of red ink. Be fearless. Do it.
It's a dirty business, absolutely. But Shell has all the secrets here in Filth and Grammar, the comic book editor's secret handbook, coming your way. And actually, the Kickstarter campaign still has 2 weeks of this recording. So jump on it, get your copy, and get the swag, and enjoy the great art that Laura, Sophie, and Imogen are giving us with this amazing book. And once again, it's word balloon, not bubble.
And thank you, John, for having us on today. Thank you to all the backers. Right now, we crushed our goal. We've obliterated 3 stretch goals. We're really close to 60K. So I just implore everyone to check it out. And also, thank you, everyone who's backed the book so far. We are so excited to keep making it. And the time frame, the turnaround, we're making it all summer. It's going to go to the printer before the end of the year. It's going to be in your hands in March, which is pretty fast, but that's how it's done. Comics should happen organically and fast. So watch it happen by backing us on Kickstarter.
Sounds good. Honestly, guys, thanks a lot. Jen, so nice meeting you. I loved the conversation, and it was a pleasure talking to you. Shell, it's always a pleasure. You know that. And thank you, everybody, for watching and listening. And I will tease tomorrow night's Word Balloon Live. I'm talking to a man that's older than Shelly and myself, but a great man that's still making great comics and books about comics, Paul Kupperberg. He is the greatest pack rat when it comes to hanging on to stuff and presenting it now. He wrote a Justice Society novel that didn't end up getting made and got the rights back to it and is self-publishing it himself. In addition to that, now you might remember this, Shell, because it might have been during your years at Vertigo, but I guess there was a DC inter-office publication that would feature interviews with various creators.
Oh, Shop Talk.
There you go.
Oh, sure. I remember that.
And Paul was conducting these interviews. They were edited for the inter-office publication that they appeared in. Well, he has the raw interviews, and he's now collected them in a new book. And it's talking to a lot of comic book contemporaries and legends as well. So we're going to talk about that in the JSA book tomorrow. And Shell's holding up, it looks like Vertigo work there. What is that?
I just wanted to show this. This is something that I covet. Back in the old days, when you worked with very generous, kind artists, they would often give you a page as a thank you after you worked on a storyline. This is something I cherish so much. It was from Mark Hempel, and it's one of my favorite pages from his story arc of the Kindly Ones, of the Sandman storyline. So this, I think, it was probably very hard to part with, because I think it's one of the most beautiful Nagel-like illustrations of desire. So I wanted to show it off because Mark Hempel rules, as Ramsey Hassan just said. He's also the nicest guy. So I wanted to share it with everybody and just say, be nice to your team and respect your editor and know your rights. Listen to The Clash.
Know your rights, indeed. Absolutely. Don't sign a stupid deal. In this
Right.
day and age, there's no excuse. It's okay. There was the rose-colored glasses days where, oh my God, I'm working for DC and Marvel. Of course you can have my ideas.
Right.
Don't do, step carefully, kids. Oh, wow. Jose really loved that piece. He says that's truly awesome. Mark Hempelard. Absolutely, Jose. I agree with you. Well, everybody, thanks a lot for watching. Thanks for listening. Excellent dialogue from Imogen and Shell. And I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Until